Hello there, everyone, and welcome to the stream. My name is Mike D'Angelo. Today we're going to be looking at a map that I actually did years and years ago on another software called Dunjinni. And we're going to be looking at it through kind of the lens of Inkarnate. Most of the map I already have is done, so I'm going to give kind of a quick sneak peek at what I already have. And then we're going to kind of recreate it as we go. I might have to stop here and there just because it is a little hot in the office that I'm in. I've got the fan going, so I apologize if my voice isn't carrying as much as I'd like it to be. But we'll just kind of wing it. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to just show you what I have real quick. We'll take a kind of deeper dive into some of this later, especially as we're going along. And I'll give kind of some context as to what everything is. So when I first started DMing for the group that I work with, so it's all close friends, family, stuff like that. We've been doing it for a couple of years, but COVID kind of put a kibosh on it, and we're looking to get going again very soon. But for now, I'm just diving into the maps and trying to bulk up some of the stuff so that if people go off the rails, I have a way to kind of bring them into things. This is actually the very first map that everybody started in for my campaign. So it was called the Forgotten Keep. They didn't really know what the Forgotten Keep was at first. All they saw was this prison cells kind of setup that they had. So each of them was in a prison cell. They were kind of forced to get to know each other this way. We had two characters who knew each other beforehand, but outside of that, nobody had met before this session. Everybody in real life knew each other, but the characters were new to each other and everything like that. It has been such a long time that I only have a vague recollection of some things. So as I was recreating it for Inkarnate, I wanted to kind of build on my memory of things. So we had the prison, and then we had some kind of like guard chambers. So this would be kind of like their ready room. This would be where the guards could post up to eat their dinner, to write their notes, things like that. They had a bed chambers that they could come to here, and then this was kind of like a torture room. Now these two rooms here didn't really exist back when I made the map. 6-7 years ago, whenever it was. But because the maps that we use as kind of like a template form and Inkarnate are so big, I didn't want to leave a huge amount of empty space, so I'm expanding on the Forgotten Keep in some ways. The map that people are going to see when we go live is actually 3-tiered. There's a first floor, a basement, and a second floor. They start in the basement. You can see the stairs that move up. I kind of let them drift off here so like you don't see the other stairs leading up to the next floor, but you'll see those on the second and the third floors maps when those come out. I think those are probably going to be delivered as variants. So if you follow us on Patreon, you get the high res version of these images for I think it's something like $2 a month for up to 4 maps. Probably going to be more than that soon. Not the cost, the amount of maps that we do. And then for $5 a month for those maps or whatever, you get multiple variants and things like that. So I'll give you a quick kind of like thumbnail sneak peek of what that looks like. If I go back to the overview here, this was the map that we worked on last week, which is our jungle fighting ring. So you can see not a lot in the little thumbnail because it's only showing you a part of the map, but you can see the names. So we have corrupt water, which is where I just kind of made the water look black and brackish. We have a broken ring, which means that the fighting ring had been damaged. We have broken bridges, which means that the bridges were you can kind of see from here that there was some components of the bridge fell into the water and they're kind of covered up. We have no bridges, where we kind of replace them with boats, and then we have passage, which is where I just moved the kind of watchtower over top of the entrance to the ring. I thought in some ways that would make more sense as well. And then we just have the plain old jungle fighting ring over here as well. So again, you can kind of see here the direction that I'm going with the maps that we have for the Forgotten Keep West Wing. You don't see everything here either, but you do see kind of like some hints as to what's happening. I'm still working on some of this stuff. You can see that the first floor is where a lot of the busy stuff happens. There's a lot of like combat encounters on that floor. There's a really cool puzzle that I'm interested in seeing how that looks in the Inkarnate tool set. So we'll take a look at that. We are going to kind of recreate what I've already done. So I'll take what we have here and I'll recreate it in here. I'll show you kind of the best ways to plan and things like that. But I wanted to kind of start off by talking about, I really love Inkarnate. So I'm going to say something that's a little mean about it. Let me see, 1 second. The whole premise of what we have in Inkarnate is, they give us new stamps all the time and things like that. But there are some pretty basic ones that I feel are missing. So I want to show you real quick some of the stuff that you're able to do with Inkarnate to kind of get you where you need to go. So you can use the Inkarnate stuff kind of in tandem with like an image editing software like Photoshop, like GIMP, something like that. So you can see what I did in these two cases. On the left, I took stamps that already existed, shifted them out into the world, and did something to manipulate them to give me something more to work with. And what I mean by that is the Nordic single bed that you see here, even when you're changing the color of it, like if I go into the hue and I change certain things about it, you see that the wood changes color and things like that too. It doesn't really give you the kind of look that you want from it. So if you take it out and you put it into GIMP or you put it into Photoshop, you can change the color of the bedspread a little bit easier than how you would do it here in the system. So I was able to do a green bed and a red bed just to kind of differentiate between the multiple guards that we have in that section of the system. Likewise, the only armor that really exists, with the exception of like cloth armor, like you might see like a shirt here or there or something like that, but there's no armor stands or anything like that in the game. So I needed to make sure that there was something that I could do to kind of do that, and I didn't want to hand draw it because it would look very watercolored. I didn't want it to lose that style. So what I did was kind of pull from what we already had in the game. So they do have this right here, which is the Gothic armor, and what I actually did was threw that into Photoshop. I used this green screen background that I kind of put up so that it was easy to kind of pull out of what I needed. Wiped out the arms, and then I actually kind of cut it into two separate pieces. I got rid of the helmet, so I just had the armor, which you could actually see through, and then I separated the helmet and used the helmet as well. We're going to take a step back out. I'm going to talk about these other ones in a few moments, but we're going to start by going to the full version of the floor again real quick, just so that I can show you what we did and why we did it. So I had mentioned that we didn't have armor and we didn't have a helmet, but lo and behold, here you can see that we have both now. So what we ended up doing, actually, you can see there's a little bit of green screen layer that came through on this. It doesn't bother me so much that I care about it too much, so I'm not going to be bothered by it. I'll leave that as is. I might clean it up in like a final version, but for now it's not driving me insane or anything like that. And then what we did is we took the helmet, took that off, put it on a table. Down here for the armor stand, all I did was use a couple of wooden poles, change the size of them, and then stick it on. That's actually just wooden tableware that I changed the color of. It really ends up looking good. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do like that. For most of the other stuff that I have in the the map, I didn't really have to do too much different. I was able to work within the confines of what we had. I did take these grates, move them to the background layer so that I was able to paint over them with some kind of like sewer gunky kind of looks. These guys, who are guarding the prison cells, they're not too concerned with making things look right. They've got other stuff to worry about. So the first floor, with the exception of those armor pieces, the helmet, there wasn't really too much that I had to do, with the exception of changing these these beds up a little bit. So you'd almost think that it was built into the system. They look pretty identical. The only difference is there's a little bit of green color on that fur pelt that kind of sits on top, but you can barely notice it. Everything else just came with the tool set that I had. So I did mention that there was those 2 other stamps. We're going to take a real quick preview at the third floor, or the second floor. You can see that when I was making my plans for this, I kind of labeled what everything was. I also changed the colors of the tile set based on what room you were in. So like if you moved out of the stairs, you can see there's a lighter set for the whisper wall, and it rotates to another darker set for the treasure trap. Again, lighter for the secret passage, darker for the poor unfortunate souls, things like that. So one of the other things that Inkarnate doesn't have is paintings. They don't really have a lot that you can work with when it comes to adding like some personal flair to a room or anything like that. They've certainly got a lot of stamps that you can work with and things of that nature, but it wasn't what I wanted to do for this room. I wanted to make it look like there was something crazy going on. This is like where the trophies and the keep are being kept, and I just didn't have that to work with. So if we go back to the stamp scraper that I put together, we'll be able to see exactly why I did what I did here and how you can do something similar. So Inkarnate has a ton of stamps that you can work with, and all it takes is a little bit of kind of clever thinking to figure out how to make it work for you. So what you can do is, on my map, which is, this isn't really a map, it's just a tool set that I'm using, you can see that what I did was I used elven tree walls, and they've got kind of like this round looking elven tree wall set that I used, and I kind of cinched it up to look like the frame of a painting, and down below I made it look like a stand as well. What we're going to do is make a copy of all this real quick so that I can peel it apart, and I'll show you layer by layer what everything looks like. So we're going to move this down so that we have a little bit more room to work with even when it's zoomed in. So it really is just all about trying to figure out ways to kind of break the system. I think that's what a lot of people call it. They call it breaking the stamps. So this was just the same frame that you see here up top. I just changed the size. Instead of leaving it the size that it was, I kind of scrunched it down a little bit. And then this is the same thing, just flipped 180 degrees. Now what you see here, it's not a canvas, it's a blue oval rug that I changed the color of because I wanted it to look like a painting canvas. So this is what I used in this case to throw a kind of like vampire bat on a moon. The moon is not a moon, it's a gold coin that's just painted to look like a moon. And then this isn't stars, it's snow. This was a pretty easy portrait to make or painting to make. And then what I did was I took the next step, and this one was even cooler to put together. So there's not a lot of, like 2D looking characters that you can grab and use within your, within this tool set. But they do have dolls. So what you can see is here, they're just little toy dolls. And I think the Farmstead set, and this isn't even a real horse, it's just a toy horse, it's a rocking horse. So this here is not a path to a distant castle, this is a seagull. So nothing too crazy there. The castle actually is not from any of the Battlemap layers. It's a stamp that you can get for the the world and regional levels. So I could have done this. I could have done like a Dwarven Citadel, stuff like that. And actually, the reason that I chose to do things the way that it was is the borders of these other rugs, which you'll see here, they were blue and green. It doesn't matter where I move. Let me get to the right rug. See, I have the green one underneath, and that's kind of acting as my my greenery level. And then if I've got this top one, you can see even as I move it down, that kind of like black outline follows it. So I needed something to kind of fit the bill of blocking out some of that black line a little bit. And these just ended up working so well. So I ended up finding things that worked for me. The cloud is legitimately just, a cloud from the battle map layer that I shrunk down, changed. I think I changed the opacity with of this a little bit. Let's check it out. Let's see if anything comes up. No, actually, I just kept the same parameters and everything, just shrunk it down. Outside of that, same stuff that I did with the other portrait. So what I did was used the elven walls to make my frame. Peel that apart for you. Same thing here. Gave it kind of like that curved edge to show the stand. Move some of that stuff out. Again, these are just blue square rugs, and then this one was stretched out to be a rectangle. That was all it took. Down the line, what I'll most likely do is the Tellus universe has plenty of maps that we made using Inkarnate, and what I'll likely do is kind of shrink them down and put them on a canvas as well. It might end up being on like a table sprawled out so that someone could make like military plans or something like that, or it could be hung up on the wall or leaned up against the wall or something like that, so that it's it maybe a little bit more academic in nature. So that's kind of what we have here, just showing you what's possible. There's a ton of other people who have done some very cool stuff. They've made aquariums, they've made I think I've seen oysters. Very cool stuff that's possible here in Inkarnate if you just know how to kind of think outside the box a little bit. It helps to have some tools too, because these I don't think I would have been able to do with like paint or anything like that. It wouldn't have ended up the right way at all. Maybe like a paint professional would be able to do something like that. So we're going to take another step back. I'm going to go into my maps again, and we're going to go to this kind of blank version of the West Wing basement, because that's where I want to start things off. This is, it's a throwback to the very first session that we ever ran, and I want to kind of help you understand. If you're not too familiar with running your own campaigns, creating your own maps, if this is your first indoor map that you're going to try and do, it kind of might help to find out where my first map started, and this is a nice place to do it. I'm going to take 1 second to take a sip of water. I've been doing a lot of talking today. So, I am going to move an Excel document over for you to see as well. Now this does not look at all similar to what we have on the Inkarnate presentation, but you can kind of see how it inspired what we saw. So we have our prison set over here. We even have the lever. We have this room that, for all I remember, this could have been completely different than what I designed in Inkarnate, and I believe that this was a table, and that was all I was really going for. I take a lot more notes these days. I've always been a big note taker, but clearly here I didn't take enough notes. So basically I was going from this, and I've had this for, again, 6 or 7 years. It's been a long time that I've had this, and unfortunately when I was unable to reproduce the maps that I made in Dunjinni, this was the next step for me. So I went back to this level. So if you have Excel or some kind of other spreadsheet like tool that you can use, you've already got most of what you need in order to create your indoor maps. To some extent, you can even use these for outdoor maps and things like that as well, because you can kind of present in your mind where you would put certain things. So I'm going to move that over one more time. If we wrap this up before, say, 7:45, there's one other little thing that I'll show you when it comes to those Excel documents. So again, here what we see is I labeled the rooms that I was going to use. Now, we didn't have the barracks, we didn't have the interrogation room, but I had kind of conceptualized these were the guard and ready rooms, these were going to be the prison cells, and these were always going to be the stairs. So Inkarnate gives you the necessary tools to throw those names together. If you need to, you can do the paths if you've got stuff that's so close together that you need to kind of help to identify where those things are. So you've already got something to work with. Even if you're working with the free version of Inkarnate, you have something that you can kind of build off of there. So I am going to take just a second to go to my planning documents. And that'll bring up my stamp settings for the Forgotten Keep items. And then what we're going to do is just build out of there. So, let me just blow this up a little bit. Alright, so there was 2 sets of walls that I used. We're going to start with the prison cells because I feel like that's the easiest. I believe that those were concrete walls. And then I just need to make sure that I'm sizing them right. So I brought them down to about 30, I believe. And what you can see here is these are nicely fit to go 2 at a time into place like this. So I can do these pretty quick if the computer is willing to work with me. But I can place these down. And I'm just going to try and wing it as far as, like, I'm not going to look at the other image anymore. We're just going to kind of throw down and see what we get. And if I need to clean some of this stuff up later, like you can see the wall over here, definitely a little bit further to the right over there. But again, my computer's fighting with me, so I'll wait until these are all placed to make any cleaning efforts. Alright, so now that I have my vertical stuff placed, we're going to move some things around just so that they look even compared to the stuff that we have on the left side. I want them to look pretty uniform. When it comes to nature, you don't want too much uniformity because with nature, things have kind of like their own little wild majesty. But when it comes to a lot of man-made stuff, people want symmetry. So it makes sense to have a certain level, a certain degree of, hey, we did everything the same, from one version to the next. I am living in a city called Levittown, and in Levittown, all the houses were made the exact same way. It's very cookie cutter, and that's because most of the time when you're in construction, you don't want to leave too many things up to chance. Levittown, Levitt, the guy who built these houses, that was kind of his big thing, was making sure that everything was kind of factory style. And you'll see a lot of new towns that are being built today. They're being built with that kind of same premise in mind. A lot of townhouses are built the same way. The neighborhood will have a couple different variations, but not too much. And again, it's because if you're a contractor, you want to be able to buy the same material. You want to be able to not have to sit there and calculate too many weird things. If you can plan ahead of time, such as it is with making maps like this, it makes life a little bit easier. So yeah, when it comes to putting together your map like this, if you were going to do a combination of indoor and outdoor, I would say you want a little bit of wild for your outdoor and a little bit of consistency and uniformity for your indoor. Now again, this is just a kind of a quick rendition of what I did already, so we're not going to spend too much time making corrections. If things look wildly inconsistent, we'll do some stuff there. But I don't want to waste too much of your time. I want to keep showing you new techniques that maybe you hadn't thought about. We're not going to... Most of this stuff is going to be pretty basic. But if you've never done an indoor map before, you might not realize how easy some of this is. Indoor maps kind of... they give me a little bit of anxiety just because I've been doing outdoor maps for so long. Certainly I did an indoor map way back in the day, but Inkarnate's toolset's different, so I was a little nervous to start trying them. We have a tavern map that we're going to do. Well, Matt's already done a couple of taverns, I think, or a couple of indoor maps at the very least. I am going to be starting my first tavern map very soon, so that's fun for me. We're going to move to stone walls after this, and just based on how much time we have, I'm not going to waste too much time with this because I don't want to, just spend an exorbitant amount of time working on walls. So we'll probably close off one of these rooms, and then I'll show you, what I was doing for the prison set, and then on Tuesday of next week, when we do one of these again, we will kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it a little bit more. So you're going to see we've got these kind of these walls that are going 2 tiles over, so we're going to need to kind of step down. You could do things one of 2 ways. You could either shrink this piece that you already have, or they have a nice smaller piece that you can use instead of making things too complicated for yourself. Fits in really nice. You can do some overlap too. The way that Inkarnate works, if you were going to do, like if I, right now, what I need to do is leave enough room for a door. I could just do this. Honestly, it doesn't look bad like that. You'd probably never notice. So you could do that if you just wanted to lay over top or anything like that. And then we're going to throw a wooden door in here. Same size. Shouldn't need to do anything when it comes to... Not door. My brain is melting a little bit. So you could do something like this. You know, it could be one that's opening. It could be one that's closed. If you were doing a double door, they have that option as well. We're going to leave it open just because I didn't have that in the other ones. And then we'll come back to this in a few moments. What we'll do next is we're going to do the... I think if I just type in prison, it'll show me a lot of stuff from the prison set. Yep, and we're going to do prison bars. The 30 size that I'm using for everything else should be enough here. And then I think what I want is the bars to be on the inside. So what we're going to do is kind of make it so that, again, there's a little bit of symmetry to it. You could make it so that they were all uniform and they were all facing the same way. So it could be left, 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 left. But in this case, I'm going to kind of do a mirror. So I'm doing left, right, left, right. And then easily can actually just grab all the prison bars. If I do select all stamps like this, then I could do control, copy and paste. What we're going to do is move this so it's been flipped, and then what I can do is the same thing over here. We could do that, where it kind of fits into place there. And then what we're going to do instead is take the prison door, and the way that I'm going to have it is the latch is going to be on the wall side. So we'll do something like that. I'm not going to worry about flipping this one vertically or anything like that, or doing a 180 until we get to the other side. So here, we'll move that up. Cut these off. And what I'm actually going to do is take this one out entirely. And the reason being, I want to kind of tell a story about someone beat the heck out of this set of prison bars. This one kind of sits a little big, so we're going to take that, move it under a layer, and that way, when they're standing side by side, they're not overpowering the walls themselves. So this looks like something broke out. This isn't a perfect prison or anything like that, so we're going to start with that. I am going to take a real quick break just to rehydrate. Like I said, it's very hot in this room. I want to make sure that I don't die of heat exhaustion. So we're going to hit save. I'm going to switch this over to the intermission window, and then it'll be 2 minutes. I'll be right back up. Alrighty, so that wasn't too bad, I don't think. Got a little bit more water in me, so I can last a little bit longer. Just noticed I've got some weird color stuff over here. That's kind of weird. Just a little glitch, but not a big problem that we have to work with. So the next thing that I'm going to do is add a little bit of some stamps, some objects in these prison cells, because having the cells by themselves doesn't really tell a story that you want. But if you're playing with some of the other prison assets, I didn't have to go far, you could do something simple like a mat. I chose in the other map that I was working with to do the beds, simply because the beds gave me an option to do something with like bedding. I mean, not fancy bedding by any means, but I had something and then I had nothing. So it could have been, in a situation like here, maybe whatever prisoner was there lost his damn mind and flung all his bedding out, and they said you're not getting it back, something along those lines. And then everything else, in the original map, again, there's certain, you're gonna have to kind of make a call about what makes sense for you, as far as in a situation like this in prison, are all your beds going to be 100% straight, something like that? Or are you going to have prisoners who handle things their own way? Do they want their bed to be facing the bars? Do they want something where they're just mad from their time here and they've moved some things around? I'll straighten these up in a second, and by straighten them up I mean mess them up. For me, when I was thinking of it, I didn't want to, if it was me, I wouldn't want my head that close to the bars, because especially if the guards are not happy with you, they're going to do things their own way. They're going to throw the slop at you that you're supposed to eat, that kind of thing. So I wanted to make sure that that wasn't something that they could do. We've got a couple of plates of food that we could do here. So we've got plates on the inside. You could actually put an empty plate on the outside and kind of indicate, hey, I'm done with my food. I had on my other map lower layer than the bed, just so you could see a little bit of, hey, what's going on. We've got food here. Food here. Again, not a lot of rhyme or reason to this because every person is different. Certainly when you're doing things a specific way, you get into like your own kind of routine. But when it's 8 different people, things happen a little differently, and that's fine. I also wanted them to have a toilet. I didn't like the toilet that they had here, so what I ended up doing, I think, was finding a bucket. So they have the tavern bucket. I think that's what I used. If not, again, we kind of talked about it earlier. There's a certain level of things that you can do to kind of give whatever you're working with its own kind of feel. So you can play with other things that you have in the tool set. I'm going to sneeze. Give me 1 second. Excuse me. I think I just muted myself in time. So yeah, everybody gets a bucket, except for whoever this is that escaped. And typically when I was working on the map that I had originally worked on, they were keeping their buckets away from their food. So you can see, I think just subconsciously I did that as well for this runabout. Just because, you don't want to mix those two things. We're going to go look for kind of like a sewer grate now. I don't know. Yeah, they had something in prison. So what I did was I thought like these were nice middle points to work with. So I put them in this spot. And again, what I wanted to do was mess up these sewer grates. They shouldn't be that clean. These people are not here for a vacation. So these guards, they're not doing a lot to mop up or anything like that. This place should stink. When if you're the game master for this crew and you're explaining things to your players, you're going to want them to start off this session, depending on what kind of thing you're trying to do. But you're going to want to make them a little bit uncomfortable. This is not supposed to be a day at the spa. What we're going to do is there is a texture in here that we can use in the sewer set. I think it's just called sewer water or something like that. It was, one of these two, Sewer Filth, I actually was the one that I used. Again, when I'm doing texture layers, I like to kind of mess with the opacity a bit. And then what I'll do is I have a drawing tablet, which gives me a little bit more freedom to do certain things. So I'm going to draw entirely over this grate, and then things settle over time. So if you're talking about a new house, you're talking about a castle dungeon that's, not built to, any huge standards when it comes to, hey, is this ground uneven or anything like that. So you're going to have a little bit of kind of like run through and everything like that. I think I had a very little amount of, kind of like a pass effect like that. For this one, we're going to make it a little bit bigger. Maybe it runs towards a couple of the cages. So we're just kind of accentuating what we already have. So same thing here. We're going to draw in here. Maybe this one's even grosser. But maybe we just have something like that. It's kind of like a star shape. So this set over here, maybe as the prison goes on, it kind of sinks deeper into the ground. So you've got a little bit more filth here. And plus, on top of that, the guards are coming, as far as this, a little less often. They're only doing it to feed the prisoners, and that's pretty much it. So again, we're at 49 changes. That's about the amount that I feel comfortable, working with. And I don't want to go too far after that. So we'll do a save. Again, I didn't want to spend too much time with just doing the prison over and over and over again. There is a lever that I used from the wizard set. And I think, it's just the regular lever. I built it into the wall. So when I turn this sideways, zoom it in a little bit, you're going to see it kind of looked like that. So it didn't look like it was on the floor. I wanted it to look like it was on the wall. Someone had to come in, grab it on the wall, pull it down. That's what opens these cells. So if you're in a situation where you desperately need to get these prisoners out for some reason, you'd be able to do that. And really, that was the basis of the session that we played. Something happened that allowed the players to get out of here and move on to the rest of the dungeon. This was made to be kind of like a social puzzle. Everybody's meeting each other for the first time, so I wanted everybody to be able to explain who they are, the last thing that they remember. A lot of these things were kind of established in our session 0 when we made that. That's a really nice way of making sure that your players are on board with the direction that their character's going, and it gives you a lot of opportunities to see how you would develop the story to benefit their character. Certain DMs, when they're building their story, it's the story of their world first, which is kind of the way that it should be in certain ways. If you're trying to be kind of naturalistic with it, we tend to think of ourselves as the main character in our own story, but there's a word called Sonder, which is every other person is living a life, completely unique to your own. We don't typically think of that kind of thing. We're just not really built for it. And to some extent, when the GM is building their world, they're building it in that way as well. But a good GM will make sure that when they're building the world, they're building it with certain nooks and crannies that benefit your character in some way. Is there a distant member of their family that they're trying to reunite with? Is there some terrible event that you can tie into their history or their future that they can kind of do with as well? You might not always pry that out of someone in a tavern or a prison or on a battlefield where someone's meeting someone for the first time, but you get little flecks of what's going on in this person's life to be able to pull that all together. Anyway, rambled over. What I'm going to do next is we'll go to the stamps that I made. So we're going to start with the armor. It's telling me that I'm about to place a private asset. That makes it unclonable, which means that nobody else is going to be able to take this map that I'm making. I can clone it myself, and I can use it as much as I need to. These are, I exported this as HD because I wanted as much detail as I could possibly get. So for these ones, typically because the HD is 4 times and the regular definition is 2 times, I just double the size of most of the other things. You'll see this is 30, this is 60. And then the next piece that I needed was a wooden pole. You're not going to find that in my pack, so I have to go back to Fantasy Battlemaps. Let's see. Let's see. I feel like it was on... Let's see. It would have been... I don't have that stamp listed. Typically, like I said, I will try and put together like a list of the content that I need so that I'm not wasting time going, what was that thing that I was working on? It might have been one of these wooden poles. In fact, I think it was. So this is from the desert set. And what you'll see here is this is a little too big. So what I'll do is I'll shrink this down to about 30. We'll see what we're working with. 30 looks like it might be a little too small, and the reason that I say that is because I want it to kind of poke through the arms a little bit. So we'll bump it up to 40. And I'm using this as a guide, but I don't want it to be on top. So what I do is I bring that down a layer. And then the next step is going to be putting that behind. So we're going to bring it one more layer down. Now, right now, you can see that kind of looks way too big. It doesn't really look as kind of like 2.5D isometric as we want it to be. So I would just take the transformation tool, so it's not the width, it's the height. And maybe chop that down to try 70 and see what that looks like. Move it up. Much better there. And then again, I didn't use... like a stand or anything. I used wooden dinnerware. So let's see, what did I call it? We'll just try wooden, not whippedom. I don't know what that was. Let's see if we... There you go. So wooden tableware. It's in the snow and ice set. You might be able to find something similar in like the tavern and the farmstead sets. And this is going to sit lower than the other ones. And what I'm going to do is, I don't like how bright it is, so I'm going to change the color. So I'll move the brightness down, and then that looks like a proper stand at that point. And if I'm doing, a story of 3 guards in this area, very easy to do this. These guards, they're pretty consistent with what they're doing. They have a regimen and a routine that they follow. So their stuff isn't kind of like, hey, there's some this way, there's some this way. It's pretty clean. So we want to keep it, with that in mind. I did have a situation where I used a small wooden table. So we'll find something for that. I believe that it was in the tavern set. It might have been a square table like this. Bring that down to about 30. And then this is where the helmet was going to sit. So again, I'm going to go back to my set. So we'll go to my catalog, grab the helmet. And again, this is going to be twice the size of most of the other stamps. So this is going to be bumped up to 60. You might even be able to get away with doing more. But as you kind of see, if we throw that on top of the armor, it kind of fits. You're not really seeing a lot of gaps or anything like that. So what I'll do is just move that over here, and that's how they kind of get in and out with what they're doing. Now, I'm not going to go too crazy with the walls in here. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to waste a lot of time with that, but there's other things that you can throw together. On the regular map that I had, we had the table, we had some chairs, we had a desk over here. The nice thing about what I have here is so much of what I already have can be replicated. So if I wanted to do this really quickly, I could. Now, one of the things is, we know that there's going to have to be a door here, so I have to give a little bit of room still. We'll stop there, because I don't want to go too crazy, filling in all of that. And I'll show you just a little bit of the things that I did in here. The prison set still has some nice stuff for the interrogation room. So I go to prison and I go to the fantasy battle maps. We have things like the ball and chain. We have the chains for the wall. There's a couple different variations of it, including a broken one. If you wanted to tell a story of a prison break that already happened, maybe that's the person that comes in, rushes into the set of prison cells and unlocks the gates for everybody, and then they go on their merry way. You could either add them as kind of like a member of an unofficial NPC member of the party that they run into from time to time, and they can be ever so thankful that they helped out. You could find other prisoners in the pillory, maybe even, terribly so, trapped in the torture rack still. When I was doing this session with my party, it was kind of like a new experience on each floor. You had some, some regular guards here on the first floor. Second floor had some animals. Third floor had like undead, things like that. And then as they got to other wings, we were exploring other things like traps and things like that, because I wanted people to feel like they were experiencing the full breadth of what you could do with D&D. And I kind of play loose with it anyway, so I wanted them to see my style and see like what kind of things they were going to be faced with. So it gives them that opportunity to kind of use each wing as kind of like a tutorial section of sorts. So what we're going to do is we'll take a look at the finished map. I'm going to save this, even though there's a very good chance that we're not going to use this since the other map has already been made. What I might do is kind of destroy this, make this like a variant. And my computer is mad at me, so we'll save using the pen. We are at like that 45-minute mark where I usually kind of start to shut down. There is one cool thing that I want to show you before I cut off the stream today. So we're going to go to the west floor, or we'll go to this one real quick again, just so you can see what we did for the interrogation room. I tried to put lights in. I might do a variant where there's no lights or the lights are all dimmed. Sometimes the maps look better for it, sometimes they don't, so I like to give the GM and the party the decision, what works best for them, especially if you're doing the variant level on the Patreon. You get all of that anyway, so if you're playing a digital game on Roll20 or something like that, you get to decide what works best for you. So the interrogation room, we had one of those chains. Clearly something went wrong here. I don't know if the guy survived, if they turned into a zombie and fought off the guards, something like that. Just enough room to kind of give like points of interest. Again, when I'm doing the overworld maps, I try and go for 4 points of interest. In the case of an indoor battle map like this, typically each room is its own point of interest. You might have individual things that you're trying to focus on in each of these rooms, but each one of these rooms can tell a story. And if I had 3 more rooms, it would be a situation where I had 8 points of interest on the map, maybe more. I do want to show you again, we talked about these stairs, so you can see very subtly I reduced the brightness on these ones. We'll take a step out and go 1 floor up. So this is the next floor. This is where we've got more information about where everything is. This was the first puzzle that I ever pitched to my adventurers, and I will have this done when I think the 20th is when this map goes out. So I'll have this done and ready. You'll see like a finished version of it so that the players and the GM will understand what's going on. I didn't have this secret room, I don't believe, when I did it originally. I'll probably have a variant where this is not on the map, so that, again, if the GM is doing a Roll20, he can switch them out as needed. The stairs is what I kind of wanted to show you. So this set coming up, you can see, is darker. It still gets brighter as they go up, and that would be how you work through that. The beast training room, I had a set of cages here. This is where, maybe these caged beasts were getting ready to be transported out of the castle. I had something broke through. What kind of havoc they caused, if any, who knows? That's up to the game master to decide. And that is pretty much it for what I'm ready to show you now. I didn't get to do too much work on the 3rd floor, except to know, hey, I need to do something with paintings. There's nothing in the stuff that we have already, so I'm going to need to build something myself. So I knew that at least. So there's one other thing that I want to show you, just because I've been showing a lot of these big template maps that I work with. I'm going to take a second to just wipe my face off, because I keep on getting on these streams and my face is just utterly sweaty and I look very silly. There's not a lot that I'm going to be able to do about that right now, but I got we're going to cut this over to the chat break. So what I typically do is I work with a company called Printful, and they are really good about putting together some of our content. So we sell on Etsy too. You can get the digital versions of our maps on Patreon, but if you want, you can go to our Etsy store, which is just etsy.com/shop/tellist or something along those lines. It's in the panels below. But what they do is they allow us to sell pretty decent mousepad sized versions of these maps. And when I say mousepad, that's kind of underselling it a lot. So this is not one of the battle maps, but this is the size that we have. So this is one of the official Tellist artworks. Let me turn the light on a little bit so we can see more of what we're working with. There we go. And I'll back up a smidge. So we're working on a story in the Tellist universe that has to do with some sky islands. So this is what we've got. This map is pretty. This mouse pad makes for a huge map. So when you print this out, it looks fantastic. This is again a 36 by 18 inch mat. So this is going to come with me to work just because it looks so nice. But that's the size that these maps that I'm working on turn out to be. So when you're looking at the jungle fighting ring, you're looking at the coastal cave, stuff like that. That's what we're working with. So I am going to kind of end it there for now. But I will leave the chat open just in case anyone kind of snuck in and I wasn't aware. And we'll just kind of go from there. We'll see if there's anybody that needs to chat. If for nothing else, we're going to thank you, Misery. If for nothing else, we're going to just kind of get into the motion of doing this kind of thing. Because eventually the idea is that I will have some more people on the streams, and I don't want to get into a habit of cutting out early. I'd rather get into a comfortable routine of making sure that I'm leaving, communication open. So I've got a couple more sips of water. We'll keep hanging around until those are finished. Once the... I think what we'll do is, this was a lot of rehashing stuff that I already did. What I'll end up doing on Tuesday of next week is we'll kind of explore some of the stuff that I haven't done. We'll do those together. So we'll do maybe the top floor, because the top floor has... I don't want to give away the answer to the water puzzle, but if you're seeing things like me throwing the paintings down, maybe I'll have a couple more of those ready. We can do that. I can kind of draw on the blood symbols in the other room, things like that. That gives us a little bit more time that we can spend together. And then I think Wednesday of next week, we'll probably explore a little bit of the following map, which I believe is a sequel to... We have a map called The Summoning. Let me see if I can find that. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go to regular recording again just to hide my one screen and my ugly mug. Let's see. So here's a low-res version of The Summoning that we'll show. So The Summoning really could have been from either perspective. It could have been the good guys or the bad guys. And then what we'll do is, for the sequel, we're going to most likely do the area below here. And I think I'm going to kind of keep with that concept of, summoning and things like that. So it might be, kind of League of Legends-esque, where you have, like a line of, it's like a portal at the end of it with, folks that could kind of run into this area. So if you're talking about like the good guys guarding this portal, or this, summoning circle or things like that, you've got something like that to work with. Actually, with that in mind, considering north to south, there's not as much room. It might make sense to have an avenue or an alley that goes left to right, because you can have a little bit more room to work with that. And since we're working with kind of this concept of, a little bit more depth, maybe that gives me a little bit more to explore. So you could have kind of like cliffs going around in a circle and then a portal over here or something like that. Just thinking out loud, nothing too crazy. That was the wrong window. So like I said, going to probably let this kind of time out. Take a few more seconds to rehydrate. And then yeah, we'll let this run out. 57 minutes is probably on the longer side as far as these kind of things go. And then on, I believe it'll be Friday of this week, this video will go live on YouTube. The idea is going to be for Talking Tellus, we'll have things go live on Thursdays, and then for the battle maps, we'll have those go live on YouTube on Fridays. So if you're looking on YouTube and you're trying to see when the next one is coming out, this will be how you know. Alrighty, I am going to let this go to the until next time window, and then, yeah, until next time. Thank you.